Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Unholy Cannoli. That's right, if you have a friend from southern Italy who's very proud of their cannoli, maybe don't make this recipe for them. In fact, you should probably not even show them the video. Unless, of course, you want to learn some swear words in Italian. But other than them, I think everyone's going to really enjoy this faster, easier, lighter, cheater version for making cannoli. Since instead of using the traditional fried dough for the shells, we're going to use a simple-to-make crispy wafer cookie. But before we get to those, let's go ahead and get started by draining some ricotta cheese, which is a technically optional step. But time permitting, if you can, what we'll do is transfer our cheese into a fine mesh strainer set over a bowl, and then we'll pop that into the fridge overnight so that any excess moisture can drain out, which is going to make the cheese a little richer and a little firmer. So like I said, if you have time, do that the day before. And I think you're going to like these even better. And then what we'll do to make our unholy cannoli shells is add some all-purpose flour to a mixing bowl, along with a little touch of white sugar. We will also want to add in a little pinch of cinnamon, as well as a little touch of freshly grated nutmeg, which is so much better freshly grated. We are also going to want a pinch of salt, as well as some melted butter, a couple tablespoons of Marsala wine, or if you don't have that, red wine will work. And then last but not least, 1 egg white. Okay, just the white. The yolk will screw this up. And that's it. We'll just take a whisk and give this a mix until we have a very, very smooth, relatively thin, spreadable batter. And basically what we're doing here is taking the same spices and flavorings we'd use in a traditional cannoli dough that gets deep fried, and we're using those in what's basically a very thin wafer cookie dough. So while the texture is definitely going to be different, we're hopefully going to end up with something that has a similar taste. And that's it. Once our batter's mixed, we'll simply set that aside, and we will move on to very lightly brush a Silpat lined baking sheet with a little bit of melted butter. Okay, not too much, maybe like a teaspoon. And then once that surface has been lubricated, we will transfer on about 2 tablespoons of our batter. And then using the back of our spoon, working from the center outward, we will create a circle about 5 or 6 inches across. All right, give or take. And by the way, this recipe should make about 6 shells this size. But we're only going to do these in batches of 2, and you will see why very soon. And then what we'll do once our batter's been spread out is transfer that pan into the center of a 375-degree oven for about 10 to 12 minutes until the outside edges and about half of the inside is nicely golden brown. And while our shells are baking, what we'll do is take some aluminum foil and make a couple molds to help form these. And for that, all we have to do is twist up some foil into a cylinder about 7 inches long by about 2 inches in diameter. And don't worry what these look like. As long as they're fairly uniform, we're good to go. Okay, so we'll twist up a couple of those, and we'll set those aside. And we'll go ahead and pull out our shells, which, like I said, we want to cook until the outsides, and most of the inside is golden brown. At which point we will very quickly, but carefully, roll these up on our foil cylinders, ending up with the seam at the bottom to create a beautiful cookie tube. And we have to move quick here, which is why we're only doing 2. Because after just a few seconds, the cookie hardens, which is good news because it will hold the shape, but bad news if we haven't shaped it yet. And if you have to, especially on the second one, press down with your spatula to kind of hold that seam together until it cools. You'll want to go ahead and do that so this doesn't spring open. Oh, and for whatever reason you roll too slowly, and that second one hardens up and you can't roll it, just pop that pan back in the oven for a few minutes, and that cookie will soften up again. And that's it. Once those are holding their shape, we can go ahead and remove the foil, leaving us with this beautiful, crispy, sweet shell with which to stuff our sweet cheese filling. So I went ahead and did a few more, which weren't perfect, but they were perfect for me. And that's it. All we have to do is let those cool completely, at which point they're ready to fill. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and make our sweet cheese filling. And for that, we will add our drained ricotta to this mixing bowl, along with some beautifully creamy mascarpone cheese, which is just an extra rich Italian cream cheese. And yes, regular cream cheese will work. And then to that we will add a whole bunch of freshly grated orange and lemon zest, as well as some fairly finely chopped dark chocolate. And then finally, before we stir all this together, we'll drizzle in 1 to 2 teaspoons of honey, or whatever amount makes this filling as sweet as you want. And by the way, these days most people use powdered sugar to sweeten this, but I do believe honey was the original sweetener for cannoli, and it's definitely what I prefer. But you go ahead and sweeten this with whatever you want. I mean, you are, after all, the Mick Foley of your unholy cannoli. But no matter what you use, I don't think we want this too sweet, since our shells are already on the sweet side. But anyway, we'll go ahead and mix that up and then start filling our shells. And for me, the easiest way is just transfer this into a plastic bag and then cut off one of the corners. And then we'll just go ahead and squeeze that into one side until that fills up and starts coming out the end a little bit. And then we'll just turn that around and repeat the process. And then once these are filled, if you want, I think it looks nice to decorate the ends with some chopped nuts. And I'm going with pistachio because I think they look and taste nice. But almonds or hazelnuts or pine nuts would also work beautifully. So use what you want. And that's it. Our much easier, much lighter, much simpler cheater cannoli is done. And if you're like me and your favorite part of a cannoli is that sweet cheese filling, then you are going to absolutely love these. Okay, for me, that thin, crispy cookie is the perfect delivery system. And even though the texture is quite a bit different than that thicker, deep-fried dough, we really do get a very similar flavor profile. And in case you're wondering, these do stay crispy for a while, but they're not going to stay like that for hours or overnight. So what you're going to want to do is make your two components, and then try to fill these as close to service time as you can. And of course, if you wanted to dress these up a bit, you could maybe drizzle some chocolate over, or just simply dust them with a little powdered sugar like I'm doing here, which I think looks kind of nice and semi-professional. Although if you'll excuse me for a second, there is one little spot of cheese that's bugging me and needs a nut. There we go. But anyway, that's it, what I'm calling Unholy Cannoli, and a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek admission that to a real actual Southern Italian cannoli maker, these probably would be considered an abomination, but a very enjoyable and extremely delicious abomination, which is why I really do hope you give these a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.